Paul Hogan made $328 million from Crocodile Dundee, but by 2015, he had just $50,000 left in the bank. The Australian tax office banned him from leaving America for 7 years. He missed his mother's funeral. His co-stars had to loan him money to keep his house. But that's not even the worst part. In 2022, doctors discovered something growing inside his body. Now, he can't gain weight no matter what he eats. The man who once wrestled crocodiles needs help opening pill bottles. He was born on October 8, 1939 in Lightning Ridge, a raw and dusty mining town buried deep in the outback of New South Wales. There were barely 2,500 people in that town, and most of them dug for opals in dangerous shafts where the summer heat could burn past 40 degrees. His father had served in the war before settling into work as a canteen store manager. His mother stayed home raising 6 children in a place that often felt more like a frontier than a town. The streets were red dirt. Miners carried guns, and arguments over buried stones sometimes ended in death. That lawless world shaped Paul Hogan's sense of grit before he ever knew the word for it. But when he turned 9, everything changed. His family gave up on Lightning Ridge. There was no money left in opals, and they moved into a cramped 2-bedroom house in Granville, a working-class patch in Sydney's west. It was 1948. The war had ended, but the struggle hadn't. Paul's father brought in just $3 a week from his army pension. Rent swallowed almost all of it. With 6 kids under one roof, there wasn't room to grow. Paul ended up at Parramatta Marist High, a Catholic school where rulers were weapons and expectations were low. By 15, he dropped out. There was no other choice. 1 in 4 teenagers were leaving school to help their families survive. And Paul was now one of them. He picked up his first real job in 1954. Stepping into the world of construction with rough hands and a sharp tongue. Nights in Granville were cold. But they were filled with stories. Paul found his rhythm around the old wood stove, doing impressions of radio comedians like Roy Renee and twisting Aussie slang into laughter. It wasn't just play. His father ruled the house like a sergeant. And Paul learned that humor could break tension faster than words. By 12, he was already performing sketches for neighbors, earning 6 pence from adults who couldn't stop laughing. He didn't know it yet, but he was building a stage joke by joke inside that tiny living room. That same year, the family took a trip back to Lightning Ridge. Paul wandered off alone and got lost among the open shafts. The mining fields were a maze of 500 scattered holes, some 30 feet deep, some filled with gas that had killed before. He spent 6 hours out there with nothing but dust, snakes, and the sun beating down at 45 degrees. When they found him at sunset, his skin was blistered, his lips cracked, and he could barely stand. But he was alive, and he never forgot the silence of that land. Years later, he said that was the day the outback first really got into his bones. At school, he became Hoggas. The nickname stuck after he pulled one too many stunts, like pretending to be a wildlife expert and telling substitute teachers about creatures that didn't exist. Drop bears, hoop snakes, wildtails. The students believed it. So did some of the teachers. During lunch breaks, he'd charge threepence to hear more, turning fiction into a business. Detention was just another stage. Teachers called him disruptive, but some quietly admitted his wit was sharper than most adults they knew. By 15, he was done with school and knee-deep in labor. The jobs were brutal. Shoveling, hauling, lifting steel in 12-hour shifts that paid just a few pounds a week. He lived in boarding houses with other young laborers, slept on creaky CCKS, and kept his humor sharp because that was the only way to stay sane. At 19, he landed a gig that would shape the next decade of his life, working as a rigger on the Sydney Harbour Bridge. That job was life and death every day. Hogan climbed the 134 high structure without safety harnesses, crawling along beams, rigging platforms for painters. The original construction had already claimed 16 lives. Hogan later joked his times went weeks without losing a single painter, but the truth was every day up there was gambling with gravity, rain, wind, steel, and sweat. And somewhere between the fear and the grind, he learned how to turn danger into punchlines to make extra money. He poured beers in Sydney pubs at night. And when the crowd got drunk enough, he'd start roasting them. Their jobs, their accents, their bad haircuts, nothing was safe. The roughest patrons usually laughed the hardest. But sometimes they didn't. One night he pushed it too far and the whole pub exploded into a fight. That night taught him there was a thin line between funny and fatal. He never crossed it the same way again. In 1958, still only 19, he married Nolene Edwards. They met at a local dance, fell fast, and built a life before they had a plan. By 22, they had 3 sons, but the money never kept up with the mouths to feed. He was still doing dangerous rigging work by day and side jobs at night. In 1961, the pressure cracked their marriage. They separated, came back, separated again. Eventually, they divorced in 1981, remarried in 1982, then divorced again for good in 1989. Their story played out in front of an entire nation and became one of Australia's most public heartbreaks. During those years, Hogan hustled hard. In 1963, he started driving trucks, hauling rock and supplies from remote areas back into Sydney. He even took up a risky side hustle, smuggling opal dirt out of Lightning Ridge, secretly picking out small gems and pocketing them. He later said if he'd been caught, he would have gone to jail. But he had mouths to feed and no safety net. The cash kept the family afloat. Then in 1968, everything changed. One afternoon during a lunch break on the bridge, TV producers showed up to shoot a safety PSA. Hogan started cracking jokes about hard hats and regulations. Nobody asked him to, but his delivery was gold. The producers couldn't look away. By the end of the day, they offered him a role in union commercials. Those aired on Channel 7 and pulled in over 3 million viewers. He made more money from those ads than he did in a year on the bridge. It was the moment that split his life in half. In 1970, he appeared on Tonight with Al Fizer and threw out the script. Instead of playing it straight, he improvised a wild outback survival routine. Audiences erupted. Phone lines jammed. His fee jumped from $50 to $500 within days. Competing networks fought to sign him. The clip aired 3 times that week and pulled in more than $800,000 viewers each time. He had officially gone national, but not everything went smooth. In 1971, he was filming a cigarette commercial when a venomous snake bit his stand-in. 3 days in the hospital. Production delays doubled budgets. Hogan developed a deep fear of snakes. The ad never aired. The company lost $45,000. From then on, his contracts included hazard pay and safety clauses. He never stood near snakes again. 1972 nearly wrecked him. He wrote and starred in The Little Hogan Family, a sitcom meant to show a softer suburban side of himself. He poured $10,000 of his own money into it, hoping to be Australia's answer to American dads on TV. Audiences hated it. The pilot scored 2.1 out of 10. ABC can't let it. Hogan was devastated. He begged other networks to pick it up. Nobody did. That failure almost sent him back to rigging. Hogan and Cornell had raised the film's original $8.8 million budget themselves. Now the studios were begging for a sequel. Crocodile Dundee: The Sephora Talon was filmed in 1987 across Queensland and New York with a $14 million budget. It wasn't as raw as the first, but it still made $239.6 million worldwide after its 1988 release. Hollywood started calling Hogan one of the biggest stars in the world, though Sylvester Stallone actually topped the earnings that year at $63 million. Hogan made his money from owning 60% of the original film's profits. He had never needed a big paycheck. He had a piece of the whole pie. Then came the missteps. Almost an Angel in 1990 was Hogan's attempt at heartfelt comedy. A $25 million budget turned into just $694 million at the box office. He played a thief who thinks he's become an angel. Critics hated it. Viewers didn't show up. Hogan dressed like Willie Nelson and Rod Stewart in some scenes, but it didn't help. In 1994, he tried again with Lightning Jack. It was a Western comedy with Cuba Gooding Jr. and Beverly D'Angelo. Rumors swirled about Hogan firing the director after budget overruns, but official records showed Simon Weiner stayed on. It turned $1,682 million, another flop. Even so, some fans still call it a cult classic. Cuba Gooding Jr. got the most praise. A strange rumor popped up later that Hogan had starred in The Deliberate Stranger, the 1986 Ted Bundy miniseries, but that was Mark Harmon. Hogan never went near that kind of drama. He stuck to comedy. The confusion didn't help his reputation in Hollywood. In 1996, Hogan played Uncle Porter in Flipper alongside Elijah Wood. It wasn't voice work. He was there on screen trying to reach a new generation. The movie made $208 million. Then came Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles in 2001. The budget was $21 by $15 million. It earned $39.4 million globally. With just $25.6 million in theaters, the magic was gone. Paul Hogan was just 19 when he married Nolene Edwards in 1958. Back then, he was working on the Sydney Harbor Bridge as a rigger, bringing home $18 a week. By 1961, their daughter Lauren was born and 4 more kids followed. But things began to change fast. In 1972, Hogan suddenly became a TV star thanks to a current affair, and his paycheck jumped to $200 a week. No stayed home with 5 kids while the spotlight pulled Hogan further away. Fame started feeding something else in him. In 1981, they divorced. She said the man she married had vanished, replaced by someone addicted to attention. The settlement gave her $500,000 and the family home. But the story didn't end there. A year later, in 1982, they got married again. For years after that, in 1986, they divorced again. By then, she had discovered through tabloids, before he ever admitted it, that Hogan was having an affair with Linda Kozlowski. It all started during the filming of Crocodile Dundee in 1985. Hogan was 46, Kozlowski was 23, and married to a cinematographer. Paparazzi caught them at LAX in December. And from that moment, the story exploded. Tabloids paid $50,000 for photos. No Edwards got death threats. Hogan's wholesome image crumbled. In 1990, he married Kozlowski in Morocco in a wedding that cost $2 million. But behind the scenes, things were already beginning to rot. Hogan got obsessed with hiding money. He spent months away trying to avoid taxes. By the time they divorced in 2008, Kozlowski walked away with $20 million full custody of their son, Chance, and the $4.2 million Malibu mansion. It was revealed that Hogan had hidden assets across 12 countries. Kozlowski later said he spent more on tax lawyers, $8 million, than he ever did on vacations with his family. She called their marriage 20 years of financial paranoia sprinkled with brief moments of romance. In 2010, Hogan was 71 and trying to rebuild his life. That's when he started dating Zoe Lynch, a yoga instructor from Byron Bay, who was 34 at the time. She moved in with him into a far more modest $800,000 apartment in Venice Beach. But after 4 years, she left too. His health was slipping. In 2014, he was diagnosed with kidney disease and needed dialysis 3 times a week. In 2019, he was seen being wheeled through LAX in a wheelchair. The man who once chased crocodiles on screen could barely stand. He was 80. His son, Chance, now 27, moved back from New York to care for him full-time. He said his dad needed help with everything, even opening pill bottles. His 5 older children from the first marriage rarely visited. Hogan spent his days alone, living in the silence of decisions he made decades ago. Chance called it his father's punishment for choosing fame over family. Back in March 2003, when Hogan was still trying to enjoy the last of his Hollywood fortune, the Australian tax office launched an investigation that would haunt him for years. They found out he had funneled $37.50 million through Swiss accounts between 1986 and 1991 without paying taxes. That same year, Australia issued a departure prohibition order.